The Middle East, a land of nothing but oil, terrorists, and a billion other unstable things. It looks like a dumpster fire that never stops burning on your newsfeed. That is exactly what you are spoon-fed every single day, every single hour. But what if I told you this place is actually the host server for this entire game we call life? Europe, America, Asia, we're just NPCs living in the world they built. It sounds ironic, but I am not joking. Your alphabet? They invented it. Your math? They started it. Agriculture? Cities? The concept of time itself? All of it, literally all of it, came from them. You always think Europe is the civilization of mankind, but here is the brutal reality nobody wants to admit. While Europe was still living in caves and banging rocks together, these guys were writing laws, mapping the stars, and performing eye surgery. So if that is the truth, why did the literal architect of civilization become the geopolitical punching bag of the world? How did the cradle of life turn into the grave of empires? And how did they end up on your daily newsfeed looking like a garbage dump? The answer is definitely not just religion, and it is certainly not just bad luck. Let's look back at 10,000 years of glory, tragedy, and absolute chaos, and debug the most corrupted file in the server of human history. Now, let's go. Alright, listen up. Before we get to the oil and the screaming, we have to go back to the server launch. The location? Ancient Mesopotamia. Before this update, humans were essentially playing a battle royale survival mode, running around, poking things with sticks, and dying at age 25. But then, in the late 4th millennium BC, the devs decided to drop the biggest, most controversial patch in history, the Civilization Update. The first players to unlock this DLC? The Sumerians. These guys were the ultimate tryhards of the ancient lobby. While the rest of the world was still figuring out how to not freeze to death, the Sumerians in southern Mesopotamia looked at a pile of mud and said, "I bet I can tax this." They transitioned from a nomadic lifestyle to permanent settlements. Basically, they quit camping and built the first actual base. And they didn't just build huts, they pioneered the tech tree for the entire human race. Check out their patch notes, it is ridiculous. New feature, cities, first time ever implemented. New mechanic, bureaucracy. Yes, they invented red tape and administration. New skill, writing, cuneiform. But here is the tea. They didn't invent writing to write poetry or love letters. They invented it to track taxes and business deals. So if you hate filling out forms at the DMV, blame the Sumerians. Nearby, another player spawned in, ancient Egypt. Around 3150 BC, they unified and claimed the Nile River. Together with Mesopotamia, they formed the Fertile Crescent. If you weren't spawning here back then, you were basically an NPC living in the Stone Age. But because this is a PvP server, peace never lasts. Around 2400 BC, the Sumerians got nerfed by the Akkadian Empire. Then came the Babylonians and the Assyrians. History books make these guys sound boring, but in reality, they were the first toxic guilds. They dominated the region for over 1500 years, using pure military might and administrative innovation, which is a fancy word for doing whatever they wanted. They had better gear, better strats, and if you didn't join their guild, they wiped you. Simple as that. But hold on, there is a side quest here that actually affects you personally right now. Over in the Levantine corridor, a group called the Phoenicians set up shop. These guys were the drop shippers of antiquity. They established maritime city-states and traded extensively across the Mediterranean. But their legendary loot drop? The alphabet. They developed the script that became the foundation for Greek and Latin. Look at the subtitles on your screen. Those letters? They exist because of the Phoenicians. Without them, you would still be drawing pictures of birds to ask where the bathroom is. So, the server is running smooth. We got cities, laws, writing, and trade. The Middle East is the undisputed main character. Then, in the 6th century BC, a new player named Cyrus the Great joined the lobby and founded the Achaemenid Empire. This guy was playing on God mode. He conquered Mesopotamia, Egypt, and West Asia. For the first time ever, the disparate regions were united under one massive imperial system. The server was stable. The economy was booming. The Middle East was the center of the universe. And then, a 20-year-old kid from Europe named Alexander decided to log in, hack the game, and ruin everything. Enter Alexander the Great. In 334 BC, this 20-year-old frat boy from Macedon decided to log in and perform a literal history speedrun any percent. He didn't just invade, he hacked the game. Alexander overthrew the vast Persian Achaemenid Empire, which stretched from modern-day Turkey all the way to Afghanistan in just a few years. It was embarrassing. He bulldozed through the map, introduced Hellenistic culture, which is just a fancy way of saying we are putting Greek statues everywhere, and then he rage quit. Alexander died in 323 BC, and his empire immediately fragmented because he forgot to save his game. But the damage was done. The Middle East was now running on a weird Greek-Persian fusion OS. Successor states like the Seleucids in Syria and the Ptolemies in Egypt took over. They built massive hubs like Alexandria and Antioch. Basically, the Middle East became a cosmopolitan bridge between East and West. It was a cool era, lots of science, lots of art, but then the fun police arrived. Visual, sound of sirens. The map turns red as Roman legions march in. By the 1st century BC, the Roman Republic, soon to the Empire, extended its reach into the Eastern Mediterranean. They looked at the chaos of the Middle East and said, "You guys need some freedom." The Romans gradually annexed Asia Minor, the Levant, and Egypt, turning them into provinces of their massive imperial system. They brought the Pax Romana, a period of peace that lasted 2 centuries. And by peace, I mean economic integration and paying taxes to Italians. But right in the middle of this Roman occupation, a massive glitch occurred in the system. A glitch that would crash the Roman firewall completely. Christianity. Originating in Roman Judea in the 1st century AD, this started as a small reformist movement. The Roman mods tried to ban it. They tried to patch it out. But it went viral. By the early 4th century, Emperor Constantine realized he couldn't stop the download, so he just installed the software himself. In 313 AD, he issued the Edict of Milan, religious tolerance, and by the end of the century, Christianity was the official religion of the empire. Constantine even moved the capital to Constantinople in 330 AD. Congratulations, the Middle East is now Christian-themed. But wait, the server isn't done crashing yet. For the next few centuries, 3rd to 7th AD, the map was locked in a stalemate that makes League of Legends matches look short. On one side, the Byzantine Empire, the Romans who refused to leave. On the other side, the Sasanian Empire, the Persians striking back. These two superpowers divided the Middle East and spent nearly 400 years beating the absolute living soul out of each other. It culminated in the War of 602 to 628 AD, a devastating series of battles that left both empires militarily exhausted and politically destabilized. Picture two boxers in the 12th round. They are bloody, tired, and can barely stand up. They are so focused on punching each other that they didn't notice a new challenger has entered the ring. And this time, it's not an update. It's a complete system rewrite. In the early 7th century, a revolutionary movement emerged: Islam. The Prophet Muhammad began preaching a message of strict monotheism and social justice. And let me tell you, this wasn't just a patch. This was a complete operating system rewrite. After unifying the Arab tribes, which was already a miracle, the new caliphate launched an expansion that makes Alexander the Great look like he was playing in slow motion. Within just 2 decades, yes, 20 years, Muslim forces took Syria, Palestine, Egypt, and completely dismantled the massive Sasanian Empire. They basically pressed select all and delete on the old world order. By 750 AD, the Abbasid Caliphate took over, moved the capital to Baghdad, and started the Islamic Golden Age. Now pay attention, because this is the part where Western history books usually get quiet. While Europe was stuck in the Dark Ages, literally living in mud huts, dying of the plague, and thinking that taking a bath would kill you, Baghdad was the Silicon Valley of the 9th century. They established the House of Wisdom. This wasn't a library, it was the world's biggest research lab. Scholars there were translating Greek philosophy while inventing entirely new fields of science. Math. They invented algebra and algorithms. Yes, the reason your TikTok feed works is because of a guy in 9th century Baghdad. Medicine. While Europeans were treating headaches by drilling holes in people's skulls, Middle Eastern doctors were performing cataract eye surgery and building hospitals. Tech, they developed the Arabic numerals 0, 1, 2, 3. Try doing multiplication with Roman numerals IV times XCV. Good luck. You can't. You need the Arabs for that. Baghdad became a global center of learning, trade, and culture. They were synthesizing Arab, Persian, Hellenistic, and Indian influences into one massive superculture. Economic boom? Check. Silk Road control? Check. Literary classics like 1001 Nights? Check. But as we know, when a server gets too crowded, it starts to lag. By the 10th century, the caliphate became too big to manage. The ping was too high. Regional dynasties like the Fatimids in Egypt and the Seljuk Turks started doing their own thing, fracturing the unity of the empire. The server was fragmenting. The defenses were down. And that is exactly when the admin decided to spawn 2 of the worst disasters in human history. One came from the West. The other came from the East. And they weren't here to debate algebra. First, let's talk about the Crusades. In the late 11th century, a bunch of feudal lords and knights from Western Europe decided to go on the world's most violent road trip. They called it a holy war, but honestly, they were just the worst tourists in history. They launched a series of invasions, set up some temporary crusader states in Syria and Palestine, and spent 2 centuries griefing the locals. They were annoying, they were brutal, but were they a system-ending threat? No. The Muslim defense, led by guys like Saladin and later the Mamluks of Egypt, eventually kicked them out. By 1291, the last Crusader stronghold was deleted. The server stabilized. The locals thought, okay, the worst is over. They were wrong. While the Crusaders were just trolls, the real threat was loading in from the east. The Mongols. This wasn't an invasion. This was a server wipe. In 1258, the Mongol armies led by Hulagu Khan arrived at the gates of Baghdad. Remember Baghdad, the Silicon Valley of the medieval world? The city of scholars, science, and the House of Wisdom? The Mongols didn't care about your algebra. They didn't care about your poetry. They sacked the city. And when I say sacked, I don't mean they stole some loot. I mean they uninstalled civilization. They destroyed the House of Wisdom. They threw so many books into the Tigris River that the water famously turned black with ink. Centuries of human knowledge, medical cures, astronomical charts, translations of Greek philosophy, deleted in a single afternoon. The Abbasid Caliphate? Executed. The population? Massacred. This was the turning point. The intellectual heart of the Islamic world stopped beating. While Europe was slowly waking up from its nap, the Middle East was burning. The Mongols ravaged Persia and Mesopotamia, destroying irrigation systems that had existed for thousands of years, turning fertile land into dust. They seemed unstoppable. They were going to wipe the entire map. But then, in 1260, at the Battle of Ain Jalut, the Mamluks, the same guys who beat the Crusaders, managed to glitch the Mongol AI and finally halt their advance. They saved the rest of the region from total annihilation. But the damage was done. The Golden Age was over. The server was fragmented, broken, and filled with the ruins of what used to be the greatest civilization on Earth. The region was now a patchwork of warlords and broken empires. It needed a new admin, someone strong enough to reboot the system. And boy, did we get one. A 600-year-long reboot. Out of the ashes of the Mongol apocalypse, a new guild started grinding XP in Anatolia, the Ottomans. Founded by a chieftain named Osman around the year 1300, they started as a tiny frontier state, but quickly realized that if they just kept attacking west, nobody could stop them. In 1453, under Sultan Mehmed II, they finally beat the boss level that everyone else had failed for 1,000 years, Constantinople. They captured the capital of the Byzantine Empire, renamed it Istanbul, and officially ended the Roman Empire. This was the ultimate base capture. From there, they went on a rampage. By the mid-16th century, under Suleiman the Magnificent, the Ottomans controlled everything: Anatolia, the Arab world, North Africa, and huge chunks of Europe. They reintroduced imperial unity to the Middle East. The server was finally stable again. But here is the problem with stability. It gets boring. The Ottomans spent the next few centuries essentially camping. They controlled all the key trade routes like the Silk Road and the Red Sea. They set up the millet system, which allowed religious minorities to manage their own affairs, which was actually pretty chill for the time. But while the Ottomans were sitting on their throne counting money, Europe was busy unlocking the Industrial Revolution DLC. By the 18th and 19th centuries, the Ottoman Empire started to lag badly. Corruption skyrocketed, the economy stagnated, and their bureaucracy became slower than Internet Explorer. They earned the nickname the Sick Man of Europe. And honestly, it fits. Imagine an old grandpa who has been coughing up blood for 50 years but refuses to go to the doctor because he thinks modern medicine is a scam. Europe was building factories and steam engines. The Ottomans were still arguing about hats. They tried to patch the game with the Tanzimat reforms in the 19th century, trying to modernize the army and administration. But it was like trying to run Cyberpunk 2077 on a Windows 95 computer. It crashed. Then came the final mistake. In 1914, the Ottomans decided to join World War I, and they picked the losing team. They fought on multiple fronts, got destroyed by the British and Russians, and by 1918, the empire collapsed. The 600-year grind was over. The Ottoman Empire was dead. The server was wiped. This was the perfect chance to let the locals rebuild their own nations based on their actual history and culture. But Britain and France looked at each other and said, "Nah, let's get the ruler out." Enter the Sykes-Picot Agreement of 1916. This was a secret deal where two European diplomats looked at a map of the Middle East and decided to carve it up like a Thanksgiving turkey. They didn't care about ethnic groups, religious sects, or tribal lands. They just liked straight lines. They created artificial borders that forced rival groups to live together and split families apart. Oh, you are a Sunni tribe? Now you live with the Shias. You are a Kurd? Congratulations, you now live in 4 different countries. Good luck not killing each other. This is the modern glitch. The reason the Middle East looks like a puzzle piece that was forced into the wrong spot is because the borders were drawn by guys who had never even been there. And then, to make sure the chaos never ended, the server spawned a cursed item: oil. In 1908, they struck black gold in Persia, and later across the Arabian Peninsula. Now, you might think, wow, unlimited money, that's a buff, right? Wrong. Oil in the Middle East is not a resource. It is a loot box that summons foreign armies. Because of oil, the West couldn't just leave. They had to protect their interests. This turned the region into a gas station that everyone wants to rob. But the biggest glitch of all? Palestine. During World War I, the British promised the Arabs independence if they fought the Ottomans. At the exact same time, they issued the Balfour Declaration, supporting a Jewish homeland in the exact same place. They literally promised the same house to two different families. When Britain finally rage quit the region in 1948, the United Nations tried to partition the land. The result? Israel declared independence, the neighboring Arab states invaded, and the 1948 Arab-Israeli War kicked off. Israel survived and expanded, and hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were displaced, becoming refugees. This created a permanent syntax error in the region's code, a conflict that has been running in the background, draining the server's battery for over 70 years. From the US-backed coups to the Soviet invasions to the Gulf Wars over oil, the 20th century in the Middle East wasn't development. It was a series of patches that broke the game even more. The West claimed they were bringing democracy and order. In reality, they installed a virus called authoritarian regimes and endless war, and then wondered why the server kept crashing. So, let's debug the final line of code. Why is the Middle East the way it is? Why is the host server constantly crashing? It is easy to look at the news and blame religion, or say that these people just hate each other. But that is a lazy answer. The truth is much simpler and much more tragic. Geography. The Middle East is the eternal crossroads. It is the only bridge connecting Africa, Asia, and Europe. For 10,000 years, if you wanted to trade, travel, or conquer the world, you had to go through here. You cannot ignore the Middle East. It is the hallway of the world's house, and if you live in the hallway, everyone is going to step on you eventually. They are not the villains of this story. They are the main characters of a tragedy. They gave us civilization, and in return, the rest of the world treated their home like a battlefield. We call it a dumpster fire because it makes us feel better about the fact that we were the ones holding the matches. So the next time you see the Middle East on the news, don't just scroll past it. Remember that without them, you wouldn't be reading this. You wouldn't be counting. You wouldn't be civilized. The server might be broken, but it is still the one that runs the world. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, or I will send the Mongols to your house. Class dismissed.